Well, it's that time of the month, one of my favorite times of the month, when I get to have a conversation with one of our neighbors. And this time around, it is Mark Fulop of Store to Door. Mark, thank you for being here. Now, I always take my phone out at this point because it's really handy for checking messages, and I can look things up on the internet. No, I start a timer for about 30 minutes so that nobody feels like they're going to be here all day. I find that really important today because we've got some groggy faces in the room, and I hate to tell you this, but you and I stand between them and sugar and coffee. So we'll see what we can do. Mark, I really do appreciate you being here. I was thrilled to hear from John, one of our friends and community members, that Store to Door would like to talk with us, like to share what y'all do.
Great.
But before we get to that, who are you? How would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh my. I think I'd introduce myself in three ways. One is I'm a neighbor. I actually probably could have walked here. I moved into the neighborhood, I think while there were still NIMBY petitions over at Weimar, opposing the Weeshine Village. And I think that seeing the beginnings of the Weeshine Village was one of the reasons why this neighborhood was really appealing.
Yeah.
I think a second way I would introduce myself is that I do identify as a person of faith. I know sometimes when you bring in speakers in the community, you don't know. I believe I self-identify as a very progressive faith. You know, one that is more let's free the oppressed rather than I want Barabbas.
Yeah.
And so hopefully this is a community that resonates with that message as well. And I guess most importantly, I think I identify myself here today as Executive Director of Store to Door, which is a nonprofit here in Portland, Oregon, where I've served as Executive Director for the last 5 years, after a career in social service and public health across a wide range of topic areas.
Thank you. So you're the Executive Director of Store to Door.
Yes.
Now, what is that? Is that like DoorDash, Uber Eats?
So we're confused with DoorDash, we're confused with Instacart, and we're confused with Meals on Wheels. Store to Door has been around for 36 years now, and we are a volunteer-driven grocery delivery service. That was our origin story, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So we deliver groceries to homebound seniors and adults living with disabilities. And we serve about 600 clients each year, 650 almost. Any given month, we're probably serving about 400 clients. We deliver food. We call clients, take their orders on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday and Thursday, we have a partnership with Fred Meyer in Hollywood and Fred Meyer in Beaverton. And we have volunteers that actually shop the orders for the seniors. And then we have volunteer delivery drivers that pick up those orders and deliver them to the seniors. And the order takers and delivery drivers both have conversations and social connection with the seniors. So we ask them to give at least 3 months of service on the order taking and delivery service side. Order takers oftentimes represent community members. They represent sometimes corporate teams that they actually just come in and help us shop. Our program, the clients pay for the groceries, and we actually have the ability to run SNAP benefits if somebody is on supplemental nutrition. We have all of that on the back end, so no volunteers are talking or handling any money for clients. The system is in place where it's a seamless system. Take orders, shop them, deliver them. So that's what we were all the way up until I came on board. That was our program. But since then, I think we went through a pandemic.
Yeah,
COVID?
5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Just like 3 months after I started, it was like, what do we do? And some people said, well, maybe we should pause our program for a couple of weeks, see how this thing plays out. And I said, my background is in public health. I think our phone is going to start ringing, and it did. And so during COVID, we went from delivering about 240 grocery orders a week to delivering 360. And that was a pretty big growth. We also are seeing over time that our clients are aging into poverty more and more. And so we have clients that are, 27% of them are at the federal poverty level. So they're living in Portland at $1,300 a month. I'm not sure how you do that.
So how does one age into poverty? Just for the sake of, like, not all of us are familiar with this idea.
Okay.
You know?
So remember way back in the day, I grew up in a small town in Connecticut where we had toaster factory and a small appliance factory that wearing blenders and toasters and those sort of things. And in the 60s and 70s, there were strong factories supported by a main street that was thriving. Every house had a porch. No house had a fence. And so we were a community. We were bound together. The jobs were living wages. There was health care provided. People retired with pensions. And that started to get uncoupled during the 70s and 80s and 90s and continues to accelerate today. Further, pensions have been largely evaporating. Unions have been largely evaporating, and so what we end up with are people who are relying on the amount of money they're putting into 401ks, into the supplemental retirement savings, except only half of the people in this country are putting into supplemental retirement. And so what we have are people who are aging into poverty because they are aging into a system where they are dependent on Social Security, maybe some additional supplemental programs, maybe a tiny bit of savings, and in some cases, the equity in their home. And I could go on for hours. That's how we've gotten to where we are. And so, in addition to doing grocery delivery, we realize we're providing food access for seniors. So each week, a senior can call and order their groceries, or we can call them, take their order, and deliver groceries every week. But if you're living in poverty, by that third week, you're having to make the decision of, do I pay my heat bill or do I pay my food bill? And so we added a supplemental free food box program. So 100 of our lowest income clients each month receive a supplemental food box that we have in partnership with the food pantry, the Portland Open Bible Community Pantry. And we have volunteers that pack food boxes. In fact, I believe it is Fred, there's a member here.
John,
who helps with the food box program as well.
We won't tell him that you called him Fred.
Okay. Well, he'll see it online if he watches it. Anyway, John is one of the small team that helps with deliver food boxes on Friday. So groceries is food access, supplemental food boxes, food security. We also have added during COVID a friendly caller program because a lot of our seniors have no social support around them. And since many of them are largely homebound, they don't come gather here.
Right.
So we are their only contact in some cases. And so we have volunteers that just call to have conversations with our clients. And then last but not least, as all of those conversations happen, we're identifying other needs that these seniors have to help them remain independent in their homes. And so we're now making referrals and connecting our clients with other services in the community that can help them stay independent. So maybe it's as simple as installing a grab bar in their shower so they reduce their fall possibilities. Or maybe it's repairing their front porch or fixing a broken rain gutter. Or in the cases of folks who are in rental situations, sometimes it's helping them find resources to get rent assistance or heat utility assistance. However we can help we are connecting clients to support services. So 5 years ago, we delivered groceries. Today, we're not only delivering groceries, but we're providing a lot of social support around those 600 clients in our community that we serve.
Yeah, that's incredible. And this was during a period, or at least starting off in a period, where folks were like, hey, maybe we should just stop.
Yes. Yes. You know, I mean, imagine those early days of COVID. The grocery stores had empty shelves, and we're trying to fill orders with sort of empty shelves. And I will have to say, our corporate partner, Fred Meyer, really stood up, and they helped us expand our services. They sort of prioritized us. And so, you know, it's easy for us to say, you know, every large corporation is evil. Some of them have facets of good. And the partnership we have for Fred Meyer is a really strong partnership. They're really committed to us.
Yeah.
They're really committed to Oregon Food Bank. So,
well, and we have to remember, corporations are ran by people.
exactly.
You know, this is actually a thing that gets us in trouble. You know, because we'll just imagine an institution as like a real living, breathing thing almost.
Right.
And we do this with churches too, right?
Yes.
But they're made up of people.
Exactly.
So we'll say things like corporations can't be good or evil.
Right.
Sure, they're a made-up thing. They're a construction that, you know, other folks created, but they're ran by people who are making good, bad, middling decisions.
Right.
We can't always identify their motivations.
Right.
A lot of that's by design. I will point out, though, that Kroger's not on that list because Kroger is still maintaining a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, at least for now.
And also, some of these large conglomerations are actually local brands. I mean, Fred Meyer is a local brand.
Right.
And I say that also fully supporting the idea that we need to shift our economy to a local economy because that's all that's going to remain even in the next year.
So you picked the quote and the traditions testimony, and the quote came from a book. It's talking about like making change zip code to zip code.
Yes.
That's something that keeps coming up for us. How do we show up in this moment?
Right.
How do we affect change? Well, we know that if we're like focused on trying to make change at a national level,
right,
you know, we're tossing small stones into a vast ocean.
Yes.
And this effort is part of that. We are tossing some stones in the ocean.
Yes.
But the work has to be centered here. You know, that's why we do Wellness Wednesday. That's why we engage with our local asylum seeker organizations and PIRC and so many others. That's why so many of us work with SNOCAP.
Yes.
You know. So I'm glad to know of another local organization that is affecting the people around us. You know, affecting our neighbors. Yeah. We're making some good progress through the questions we're wanting to talk about. I do want to ask, though, why you yourself are doing this work, because I know this is gutting work at times.
It's exhausting work.
Yeah.
It is. We could double in size. We could triple in size. There's an estimated 4,000 to 6,000 seniors that could benefit from our program just in the Portland metro area. And we're hitting 600. So the challenge, why I do this work is I think faith demands it. You know, our faith demands that we are participating in the community. Now, that's not my executive director role, because clearly Store to Door is not a faith-based organization.
Sure, but this is some of your personal motivation.
So my personal motivation comes out of sort of a faith tradition. But more than that, it comes out of the recognition that, again, comparing when I grew up in this small town to our neighborhoods today, imagine what our lives would have been like if we didn't give all of our power away to corporate entities that continue to strip out the soul of our community. We're here as weavers of social fabric. That's our mission in this world. And we've lost that connection to each other, zip code by zip code. Whether that's, it's easier to do one-click shopping than it is to drive down to a local store, where I might have to pay $2 more, $3 more for the same item. And yet I understand the economics sometimes drives us to make those kind of value decisions. At the same time, if those gathering spaces, the public spaces, is what strengthens us as a community. And the seniors that we serve, if you've been in their homes, if you've met them, if you've talked to them, they have these rich histories, and yet they're aging alone in isolation. Yeah. When we had a functioning public health system at the national level, our Surgeon General, published a report based on all the research that says we are in an epidemic of loneliness. And so what drives me is the fact that we have seniors aging not only in poverty, but aging in isolation and in loneliness.
That's heavy. I feel like that's worth sitting with. Any of you know folks who are or have experienced that, the aging and isolation? Raise your hands if this conjures people to your minds. Yeah. Me too. Do you have any stories that relate to the work that you do? Like stories that maybe help you keep on with this? Because it is hard work.
Boy, I could probably share 100 stories. I think that the most meaningful thing about this work, in terms of, we can focus on the heavy side.
Yeah.
But on the positive side, what's fascinating about this program is the kind of friendships that grow up between volunteers that are delivering groceries and clients. The friendships that are woven together, volunteers working with volunteers. If you guys have ever done group volunteering here, I'm sure you have, that you understand that your ties get strengthened when you're together. And well, I could tell you just a lot of stories of clients who will say that I've been delivering to this family, for this husband and wife, for 6 years. And the wife had health problems and ultimately passed away after losing a battle with cancer. And yet the husband stayed in the program, and the volunteer checks in on this widower, and they have a friendship that defies kind of the norm of we're just loosely connected to each other. And even today, I mean, so many of our clients, in fact, sometimes we have to talk to volunteers and say, okay, we've got to understand your boundaries as a volunteer with store to door, and your role as a human being outside of store to door. And sometimes it gets a little close to the edge where you need to pull back as you're representing this project. But let's jump in. You can still jump into the lives of other people. And I think that if there's the thing that motivates me is the fact that we are helping people to jump into the lives of each other.
Yeah. So you were mentioning that one of your one of your main motivators, personal motivators, is your faith, and I think you did a great job of encapsulating how that looks. And that brought to mind some of my own personal motivating factors, and that's faith as well. But I tend to think of that primarily as love.
Yes.
Because the way I view God is through that lens of love.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's one of the areas that gets so fuzzy for us, because we're like, oh, love is when I feel warmly towards somebody, you know? Love is affection. It goes so far beyond that, you know? Like James talks about faith without works. It's kind of meaningless,
right.
You know? You see somebody who's hungry, and you say, oh, I'm going to pray for you. And then you go on your way, and you do nothing about it.
Right.
And James is like, that kind of faith doesn't even matter, in his view, you know? And I view love like that, too. Because us Christians, we're pretty big on being like, we love God and we love people. And we have to emphasize that, because Jesus is like the greatest commandment, love God and love people. And we're like, I'm loving so much right now. I'm shooting all of the love right out of me, you know?
Right.
And then we act in a way that has no obligation to other people.
Yeah. And I would go just one step further. Think about the story of the Good Samaritan, right? The Good Samaritan got involved and helped bandage this person up. And I think that's the great first step, is helping to care for the wounds. But beyond caring for those immediate wounds, the Good Samaritan put this guy on his donkey, took him to a village, put him in an inn, and said, I'm going to cover his costs. He went upstream and started to say, let's figure out how can we change the whole dynamic and see this person through back to being healed, back to having a full restoration.
Yeah.
And I think for all of us, I mean, we have to measure our own, because this could easily also devolve into, oh, I'm not doing enough, I should feel guilty.
It's that perfection thing.
Yes, exactly.
And it's all on me.
Yeah. But if we realize it's not all on us, that it's about all of us together doing what we can together, it's a framework of salvation as this corporate communal salvation, the ways outlined in the Old Testament, and how we've so narrowed it. It is that I feel loved so much right now.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's like the purpose of church is because it brings us together as a community, and we become so much more as a collective. And going back to Store to Door, we've got 1,000 volunteers that give 20,000 hours over the course of a year. Just let that sink in. That's like having 10 full-time staff members that are volunteers.
Right.
And, we have 40 or 50 volunteer order takers, 40 or 50 volunteer drivers. And these are folks who are making 2-hour-a-week, weekly commitments to our program, for some of them for years. We have volunteers that are taking orders from clients who were there back in the day.
Right. Well, and I think some of us, so Tub and Lucille were honored a few weeks ago as special volunteers of not just of the year, right? Like they were recognized for decades, maybe not decades, but years and years of involvement with Snowcap. There's a special sense of connection that we form in the work that we do, like you were mentioning. So I have one question left, and that is, how do we get involved? And I recognize there's two components of this. One that I think maybe some folks might be a bit sheepish about asking, and another that I could see folks being more bold in asking. So I'm going to start with the one that maybe some of us might be a little shy about, and that is, how do we get involved if we need help?
Right. So So you can contact our program by either through our website or even just a simple phone call. Our number is pretty easy to remember. It's 503-200-3333. Pretty easy to remember.
Yeah.
You can call, and we have an intake process. So we have a staff person who will go through like questionnaire, kind of bring you on board. I can tell you we have a waiting list, and that waiting list can be a bit lengthy. And back to how you can help, but waiting lists are kind of a little bit fluid because a little bit of them are geography dependent. And do we have drivers in that area? So if we have delivery drivers and you're in an area where we may have some capacity to add another person or two to a delivery route, that wait could be a little bit shorter. Sometimes that wait could be longer.
Yeah.
So but it just starts with contacting us, a phone call. We then connect you with our intake coordinator, and she will kind of lead you through some questions. All of the information is obviously protected information. Though we are not delivering health care, we treat all information as though we're HIPAA protected, and it's all extremely confidential. When it comes down to actually enrolling in the program, the whole financial side is completely separate from the program side, so that there are just individuals that are the only two people that are handling the money, which most of it is bank transfers and that sort of stuff.
Right. Now, you already know the next thing I'm going to ask, and that is if we're interested in volunteering, how do we get involved?
Okay, so volunteering, same thing. It could be a phone call, it could be talking to me. Go to our website. Although our website, it needs some work. So let me tell you just real quickly, Monday and Tuesday we have like a 2-hour shift where we ask for a 3-hour commitment, and you're actually just calling seniors and taking grocery orders. So what you'll need is a phone. You need to have some basic computer competencies because we do enter orders into an online database system. So that would be, and again, ideally we look for a 3-month commitment is sort of like the baseline. It can be done from home. You don't have to go anywhere. You have a list of clients, you call them, and it's just not taking their orders. It's also kind of connecting with them as well. Wednesday and Thursday morning, convenient to this location would be the Fred Meyer location in Hollywood. We do shopping on Wednesday and Thursday morning from 8:30 to about 10 or 10:30. So it's just a couple hours where shoppers come in to actually just shop the orders. You basically get a clipboard, it has the order, and we're very non-judgmental, so whatever people are ordering, we're buying for them. So that's the second way. The third way is similar to order takers. We have delivery drivers where you say, I can deliver in this particular neighborhood. And that position in the order taker, actually you have to go through a quick background check because, again, you're having encounters with our seniors, and we want to make sure that those volunteers particularly are background checked. Right. Again, 3-month commitment, at least. Generally, it can be, depending on the size of your car, you could be delivering 3 orders, you could be delivering 5 orders. We have some delivery drivers that will deliver to an apartment complex and may have 2 or 3, or you may be driving around a bit. We do pay for mileage if people are saying, yeah, I really want to do this, but gas is so expensive. We do reimburse mileage on a monthly basis. So again, you get 2 hours or so on Wednesday or Thursday, starting around 11 through 1 or 2 in the afternoon, because you're picking up the grocery orders at Fred Meyer, the bins, and so you got to be able to carry bins too. We do have weight limits on those. Last but not least, we have friendly callers. You can just be similar to an order taker, a little less structured. It's really just having phone calls with seniors, and that usually happens on Fridays. So those are the ways you can get involved. Shopping can be, a random. There's not a long-term commitment because you're basically a shopper in the store on those days.
Thank you, Mark. All right, folks, we've got 1 minute left. So we're going to get any questions that you may happen to have, and I'm going to ask you to keep your questions to 1 sentence, and please do not give Mark suggestions or ideas that you may happen to have. If you feel like sharing those, you could do that during coffee time. Okay. Yes, Barbara. Steve's bringing a mic up to you. Steve's got his running shoes on.
So I'm wondering if you're being affected by any of the federal slashing of public health and other kind of organizations. Is some of your funding federal?
Our program is not dependent on federal money. Our volunteers, we have donations that come from individuals. We have corporate donations. We actually write grants for foundations, but we have very little federal money, we have a tiny little contract with the county, and indirectly that could be federal money. Challenge is that if SNAP benefits if they get cut, then that's going to make life even harder for our clients. If Medicaid gets cut, then that's going to be devastating to many of our clients. Anyway, I could go on. What we can only do is say, as a community, this is what we can do right now.
Thank you. All right, let's go. Yep.
Since you serve a vulnerable population, do you have guidelines for your volunteers if they observe any abuse of the financial abuse or other problems that might be obvious to them?
Yes, we do. We actually, again, we don't want to turn our volunteers into social workers, but because we have, our program director is a social worker. She's a master's level social worker. We have 2 of our outreach clients that are helping to connect our clients to other services. They get their information on clients from clients may self-identify, volunteers may observe. Like, boy, man, I've noticed that so-and-so, I go to put the groceries away, and the same groceries from 3 weeks ago are still in the fridge. I'm noticing cognitive decline. I'm noticing they're no longer stable on their feet as they walk. That kind of information, definitely, we do some training, but again, this is really about social connection more than it is about making volunteers into social workers. But volunteers definitely are part of that system that helps us keep our finger on the pulse of these clients. Because again, for our clients, we are the difference between them remaining in their home, them going into a Medicaid bed if they can navigate that, or ending up in one of the tiny homes in one of the villages around the community. So it's important work. But again, we don't put that undue pressure on volunteers to be social workers.
Thank you. Okay, let's get Wendy's question really quick, and then we'll wrap up.
Do you have anybody who does legal paperwork or, do you have anyone who does legal paperwork or research or, helps people with reverse mortgages? Because I have a side hustle as a notary. I'm happy to volunteer.
Yeah.
I'm doing an apostille in an hour.
What we do is we refer to agencies that actually, so we have a strong relationship with Adult Protective Services, and so if we see anything that could potentially be fraud or abuse of seniors, we do have direct line. We also have in our list of resources, if somebody says, boy, I have no will and I'm really getting concerned about that, we can then refer people. So again, we don't try to do all things. We try to be the connector to other resources beyond food delivery and food box delivery.
Thank you. Mark, thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time.
Right.
Will you be able to stick around with us for coffee?
I will stick around for a while, yes.
All right.